the plan before this war coming in is Gaza needs to get rid of Hamas. Allow Saudi Arabia to establish the two-state solution, and that way it gives them enough coverage to tell the general population, we freed Gaza, so now it's time for peace. Let the business happen. Let us be businessmen and let us take care of our empires, and you guys can shut up because there's peace in Palestine. But the Jews that went to Europe and messed around with European blood, the Caucasian blood, they wanted to out-Jew the original Jews that were in Arabia, that stayed in Arabia. And as God has presented the idea of who the Jews were in the Quran, these people are very, very well in tuned and very understanding on how the Zionists would think. Why? Because they think like them and even more. So they tried to backstab the Saudis. That was the very simple thing. On October 7th, Hamas attacked the Zionist state. This was already in the plan for many years. This was not something that only Hamas was thinking about and trying to perpetuate. Unfortunately, in this case scenario, Hamas was used as a guinea pig. Hamas did not understand the full picture of what's going on and how they were set up to be in a position that they are in now, up against a very powerful force with very minimal help. And the people who provided them with the resources to do what they did, they're no longer in sight. Yes, there's a support coming from Lebanon, from the side of Hezbollah, but there isn't much of an assistance on even political pressure trying to mitigate the situation. Is because this started a long time ago. I'm not talking about the Palestine and Zionist relations, but I'm talking about this specific part of this situation. Before the Palestinian event occurred, there was something that was happening in Saudi Arabia because of Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince that is supposed to be the upcoming king. If that's what God has allowed to happen, that's what will happen. But he has presented himself in a way where he wants to revolutionize the Gulf area, especially Saudi Arabia. He wants to bring them in par with the rest of what's happening in the world. Now, these politicians, you have to understand their mentality. They're not people where you can think that they care about their people. To them, they are one of the elites in business transactions and business dealing. The human psychology and the way that humans work is playing out in the elites. The majority of them has already bought into the world. They're just thinking about their empire and how to keep their business running. And now the more resources you have, the more that you can accomplish in regards to whatever is under your hand and control. With that said, you have the understanding now that Saudi Arabia is a very rich country. Saudi Arabia has been sitting on a lot of money for a very, very long time. MBS comes along and he made this vision, or he made this plan where he wants to transform Saudi Arabia to make it into, as he would say himself, into the next Europe, or make it the destination of the world.
أنا أعتقد أن أوروبا الجديدة هي الشرق الأوسط. المملكة العربية السعودية في ال5 سنوات القادمة سوف تكون مختلفة تماما.
Now, this cannot happen until this was already been brought forth to behind back channel into things like the World Economic Forum, which you see Saudi Arabia very active in now. And they had to throw this ripple out. He had to make this proposal to the people who are in the highest echelons, from people in Russia to people in China, to the Zionist state, to the people in the West, in regards to what he would like to achieve so that he could get their blessing, so that he can accomplish what he wants to accomplish without having political pressure and pressure from the people who are either at his caliber or higher than his caliber. It was very clear that when they did meet behind closed doors, everyone put whatever they want on the table in regards to make this business transaction occur. So they've already tossed this idea out. The people have already discussed. They already made their plans on what they would offer and what they want in return. Saudi Arabia got the go-ahead. MBS made a public announcement. And remember, they cannot make these public announcements until they've already had things in the motion with their business partners. Now, because these people are businessmen, because these people are focused on resources, they have to play a fine line between trying to keep their people, who are their sheep. This is people, and population is another resource. They need to keep them to a level where they're happy, but they cannot kind of speak out of line, and at the same time, they cannot really abuse them to a point where they would turn on them, because there's just many of them. So they have to always play the line of policy and try to paint themselves out so that they would adhere to the culture, and if they're in a religious country, to the religion. And that's something Saudi Arabia really has to do. So they might be talking about certain things with the religion. They really don't care about it, nor do they believe in it. It's just so that their people go, wow, that's amazing.
إذا نجحنا في ال5 سنوات القادمة سوف تلتحق فينا دول أكثر، وسوف تكون النهضة القادمة في العالم في 30 سنة القادمة في الشرق الأوسط إن شاء الله. هذه حرب السعوديين، هذه حربي، اللي أخوضها شخصيا، ولا أريد أن أفارق الحياة إلا وأرى الشرق الأوسط في مقدمة مصاف العالم، وأعتقد أن هذا الهدف سوف يتحقق 100%.
So just generally speaking now from a religious point of view, this man didn't really invoke God at all. He said inshallah one time, but this is out of habit. It wasn't him actually putting God in the picture, because he said 100% that he's going to achieve this goal. So he's seen the unseen. But he cannot say this until the fact that he already took the blessings from everybody around. He understands that he needs to make relationships with the Zionist state for him to achieve this goal. They made it extremely clear that one of their plans that they want to achieve between now and 2030 is this great city called Neom. And Neom has multiple cities within it. It's in the northwest region. This is important. It's in the northwest region of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And they've already put plans in place, and they've already started construction in these multiple cities that are going to be revolutionary.
There's Oxagon, a thriving city at the crossroads of the world, where advanced manufacturing will enable industries of the future. Trojana, a year-round mountain destination. And just remember to pack your skis when you visit. Or if skiing's not your thing, there's always Sindala, one of Neom's many beautiful islands, perfect for some R&R. And the Line, a 500-meter high, 200-meter wide, 170-kilometer long city in the shape of, well, a line. No roads, cars, or emissions. And everything its 9 million residents could ever need within a 5-minute walk.
They've seen the future. They're looking forward to this little part of heaven that they're going to build. But I want you to pay attention onto where they want to put Neom, which they put in the beginning. It's in the northwest of Saudi Arabia. It's very close to the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt, and it's right to the border of where the Zionist state is, because they want to make it a hub for tourists coming from Europe. And that's going to be also a hub of people coming from, if Tel Aviv was going fine, it's also going to be a part for the Zionist people to come and have fun in this tourist / political / business and commerce capital that they want to build. This is why one of the main reasons the war in Palestine occurred. The point of the war was to use Hamas as guinea pigs to go into the border. That's why there was no security when they breached the border. They went into a lot of distances without resistance. The resistance showed up where there was also a rave happening. So there are people who are part of the military, but in civilian duty at this time, or just enjoying themselves. Now, all of a sudden, the security forces did show up. Remember, there was a lapse of security, as if they knew they were coming. And now the security forces, when they showed up, it was activated using something called the Hannibal Protocol, which is something that you could look up, where the Zionist regime will make sure that they will take the least amount of hostages possible. And the way that you do that is by killing your own people. So Hamas broke into the border. They're like, okay, wait, where is everybody? Okay, let's drive in. Now let's start resisting and making our point that we've been training by Iran for a very long time. Okay, now the Zionists is showing up, but they're killing themselves. They're just shooting their own people. This is awkward. What are we supposed to do in this situation? They didn't know what they were walking into, but this was all part of the plan. They go back to Gaza with the hostages, and Israel makes their Hasbara, their propaganda, go at all horses running. And now we are going to eliminate Hamas. Why? Because quite simply, the plan before this war coming in is Gaza needs to get rid of Hamas. Allow Saudi Arabia to establish the two-state solution, where now Palestine is Gaza and the West Bank. The West Bank is going to be under the jurisdiction of Jordan, which it always was. And anyone who wants a passport in the West Bank, they would take a passport from the Jordanian authorities. Now, who would take the responsibility of rebuilding Gaza after this terrible war where we have expelled Hamas, and now we have these brand new investments of who cares of who died, but now we have these opportunities to rebuild this area and also make it part of this expedition that is going to lead to Neom. Who's going to be responsible for that? The Gulf states, primarily Saudi. That's why they're pushing for this two-state solution for normalization, because this is what they agreed behind door. They got what they wanted. The war started. They would have given, by the politics, Palestine the right to even issue passports, because the Palestinians are not going to take Saudi passports. And that way, it gives them enough coverage to tell the general population, we freed Gaza, so now it's time for peace. Let the business happen. Let us be businessmen and let us take care of our empires, and you guys can shut up because there's peace in Palestine.
Can I just ask you, what is the first thing that has to happen in order to achieve peace in your view?
Well, right now we need a ceasefire.
Beyond that, though?
We need to restart the peace process.
Is that possible?
It has to be possible. If we are not willing to overcome all the difficulties, all the challenges, all the history that is involved in this issue, then we will never have a real peace and security in the region. So we must restart the peace process.
Do you think
the Arabs have shown clearly, have shown that they are serious, have shown that they are willing to engage? We are ready. We hope that we can do it soon.
Do you believe the Israelis are serious?
But the Jews that went to Europe and messed around with European blood, the Caucasian blood, they wanted to out-Jew the original Jews that were in Arabia, that stayed in Arabia. And as God has presented the idea of who the Jews were in the Quran, these people are very, very well in tuned and very understanding on how the Zionists would think. Why? Because they think like them and even more. So they tried to backstab the Saudis. That was the very simple thing. They were like, you know what? Yeah, behind closed doors, with the pressure that we have from America, we did agree to a two-state solution. The war started, the devastation happened, we've ruined our image, but we're going to keep Gaza. We're going to keep that resource. And that new canal that you guys want to build, that's ours. And the gold that we discovered in Gaza, that's ours. And the oil that we discovered in Gaza, that's ours. So now everybody's like, hey, hold a minute. This is about business. This is not about you and what you want to have, Mr. Zionist state. So you started seeing like even Britain saying like, hey, it's time for a two-state solution in Palestine. Okay, so America's obviously very bought into the Zionist state. So most of the politicians are lobbied by the Zionists, and at the same time, they have loyalty back to the Zionist land and to America. There's other politicians where they're just loyal to America. They just want what is best for America, and they could see that they are being used to a level where they haven't been used before. The general idea of what they would like to achieve is, and this is the general feeling, again, by what God has revealed to me, is that they rather work with the Gulf states, states like the Emirates and states like Saudi Arabia, because they are easy to deal with. It's not that they're content with what they have, but they really are about the money. To them, there is no religious basis to what they do. They like to show their religion as something that is classy and luxurious, and they're fine with that. But they're not trying to achieve religious prophecies like the Zionists are doing. So technically, America wants to work with Saudi Arabia and the Gulf more. So now you're seeing this weird kind of pressure where America is slowly turning on Israel, but there's these inner feuds. And this cannot be achieved until America goes through a civil war, which is what they're setting up with. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is America is fed up. The Zionists betrayed the Saudis, and the Muslims are very not in tuned into this. Now, you as a Muslim, you don't need to get involved in all this politics, but you need to understand that these are the mentality of the psychology of the people that are running you. How are they dealing with the force that can fix all these problems? The force of what Islam was in the beginning. The worst thing for Saudi Arabia, for the Zionist state, for the American state, for the Russian state, and for the Chinese, but the Chinese are easier to deal with, is a unified Middle East. Unified not under nationalism, which is something that their propaganda is always preaching in the Middle East. You see the pictures of your rulers in all the countries and publications all about nationalism and your flag, and everybody's extremely racist on the point of nationalism. This is something that the West engineered. What did cause the Muslim empire to fall? If you think it was external pressures, it had some part of it. Yes, you could claim that colonization and the Western pressure and Jewish pressure is what caused Islam to fail, the Islam caliphate. It's not true. God says that the hypocrites are in a lower level than the disbeliever. Me knowing my enemy, that's something that's very easy. That guy is my enemy. He's trying to plan against me. I'll try to offer peace, but most likely they're not going to give me peace, but I will do what God has commanded for me to do in the Quran and not fear them. But if my enemy looks like me, he's talking like me, and he's acting like me, even though he's not convincing me, this would be terrible for the people who are sitting next to me, who are not aware, who do not have the mentality that I have, or they don't see what I see in regards to who's the hypocrite. The reason why the Middle East is in the condition that is in, and why there is no caliphate, is because of a simple fact. You guys stopped fighting.
The supplication is important, my brothers, especially during Ramadan. Make an effort to pray and remember to pray against Hamas, the brotherhood responsible for causing harm to our brothers in Gaza. Just as you call on the occupier, I call on the terrorist Hamas Brotherhood. We pray for God Almighty to hasten their destruction, and also remember your Muslim brothers worldwide, those affected in Gaza and beyond.